So, in our research, we looked at how wearing a mask can reduce your infection risk. And we used data from the literature describing how different materials compare in their ability to filter the virus, the volume of air that people breathe over certain periods of time. And our research showed that masks like N99 and 95 surgical masks do the most to reduce infection risk. But of course, we want to reserve those for people who are, on the front lines of this, who are in healthcare. But obviously, for those of us, at home who have to go to the grocery store, go into public, we want some option other than those masks. So some of the non-traditional mask materials we looked at included vacuum cleaner bags and tea towels. And those were the two top performers after those more traditional masks. So just to give some numbers on that, we, with our models, saw that the vacuum cleaner bag reduced infection risks for 20-minute exposures by 58%. For a 30-second exposure, it reduced infection risk by 83%. And our next best was the tea towel, which reduced infection risks for a 20-minute exposure by 41%. And then for a 30-second exposure, it reduced infection risk by 63%. So these non traditional materials can still have a big impact on reducing our risk.
And to be clear, what's the effectiveness or the percentage rate of success for the N95 or a surgical mask?
So those masks in our model had infection risk reductions on the order of like 90% or 94%, depending upon the duration or the amount of time that someone's in a contaminated environment.
Okay, many of us, though, are wearing cloth masks. What's the percentage of success for those?
Right. So it really depends on the cloth. So, a tea towel or some type of towel you might have in your kitchen that has really densely knitted fibers, that's going to be better than something like a t-shirt or a scarf. And I've seen some pictures of people, sort of living out the Wild West. They have these scarves that sort of drape down over their face. And we found that scarves in our model actually offered the lowest infection risk reduction of those different material types. So to give some perspective on that, again, the vacuum cleaner bag reduced infection risks for 30-second exposures by 83%, but the scarf reduced infection risks by 44%. So almost half. So they can still offer some protection, but really you want to look for something that has a denser knitted material or a higher thread count.
Many people think that if you're wearing a mask, that's good enough, right? That's the expectation. What if you're in a classroom, an office, a plane, a bus? Is it as effective?
That's a good question. So, in our work, we do show that the longer you spend in a highly contaminated environment, the less that mask can protect you from infection risk. And that just has to do with, the longer you're in that environment, the more you're breathing in. And even if that mask is filtering, it's not filtering 100%. So, as you're exposed to more, your risk goes up. So, while masks are extremely important, especially in settings like you described, in the classroom, in your office, in an airplane, anywhere that's, you're sharing public space and public air with other people, even though that's very important, the best defense is to not be there. So the best defense is to be home if you can.
Can you really describe what you're referring to when you're talking about being in a setting?
Yeah. So, in the field that I'm in, which is exposure science, one thing we think a lot about is how much time we are in an environment where there's a contaminant, which in this case is a virus. So, in our work, we looked at what if you're in a contaminated environment for 20 minutes? How is that different than if you're only in that environment for 30 seconds? So a scenario might be you're in the grocery store, you're there for 20 minutes, you're getting a full load for an entire week as opposed to going in to get one thing and leaving. How different are the risks in those two different scenarios? So we did see that infection risk reductions were smaller for 20 minutes, meaning that your risks are greater. And for those shorter durations, we saw that masks reduced infection risk by quite a lot.
Okay, so the time you're in that space, that environment is part of this equation as well.
Right.
Amanda Wilson, a researcher here at the University of Arizona. Thanks for your insight.
Thank you for having me.